Good evening. I'd like to call to order the December 9th, 2024 meeting of the Lowell Historic Board. We're going to take the agenda a little bit out of order due to a quorum issue. We're going to jump to other business first for the 5.1 Thorndike Street informational presentation. This is informal discussion, so if you want to introduce yourself and present the project as you have it in mind. And
thank you. I'm Kevin Murphy,
from there.
63 Newberry Street, Lowell, Massachusetts. I represent the petitioner, Michael Farris, who is the developer of this proposal. What we're proposing to do is to construct a signature 10-story. I know in the notes that we received from the board is that it said 11 stories, but it's actually a 10-story building. We believe it's going to be a signature building in this area, comprising 90 housing units. There will be 27 studio apartments, 27 one-bedroom, and 36 two-bedroom units. Not only does this proposed development fall within the historic district, but it also falls within the new MBTA community zoning district, which means that the density requirements are much less, and the fact that we're within a half a mile of the Gallagher terminal, then the parking requirements are much less also. I really think that this is going to transform that neighborhood, which has been downtrodden for many, many years. We have met with the city administration, and he is in full support of this project. He also believes that it's a transformative development that will spur economic activity in that area. The manager has also talked to us about providing infrastructure improvements in the area that will improve access not only to this development, but also to the other surrounding businesses in that area. We have with me this evening the developer, Michael Farris, but more importantly, we have Matt Hammer. He's more attuned to the development aspects of this project than I am, and I think it would be excellent for any questions other than basic things to go to Matt Hammer. So if I can, I'll bring Matt Hammer up to describe exactly what this development is going to be. Again, like I said, it's in the MBTA Communities District. Right now, the zoning in that district calls for a building of no more than 7 stories. But we'll be going to the Board of Appeals for a variance to hopefully be able to extend it to 10 stories. And let me make one point before Matt starts. This is not the first building that you're going to see in that area. I really believe that this is going to be a catalyst for other buildings to be constructed in this MBTA community zoning district, especially along the Appleton Street corridor, is because you're so close to the transportation district that it's going to spur other developments such as this. So I really don't think this is going to be the first one that comes before the city, but I think it's going to be the one that's going to be the most transformative. So with that, Matt Hammer, if you could address.
Steve, do you have a site plan? And to familiar ourselves with where this is everyone familiar with where this is? Okay, so I won't have to get you on Locust to explain where this little pocket is. It's kind of sits down from the overpass, and it's almost something that no one would even know that it's there unless you went down and got to this Middlesex Place. But there's two existing buildings here that are approximately 12 feet higher in grade. This road goes down here, which is called Middlesex Place, even though the address of this property is 5.1 Thorndike. This is the railroad here, and this is the Pawtucket Canal here. This is Middlesex Street here, which gets you to this location by one-way roadway, which goes around underneath the overpass. That brings you around. When you come down Middlesex, you have to come down the street, take a hard left, to come back around to get yourself over to this location. This is the proposed building here, which is maybe Steve put up the rendering again. Yeah, that does it. So here's the entrance here, and this is the entrance here off of Middlesex Place. There'll be a parking area here for vehicles. There'll also be a at-grade parking garage underneath the building, which will have an entrance here. This will be some green space here. This is owners of the proprietors of Locks and Canals. I don't anticipate anything that would happen here in the future. And then here is the Pawtucket Canal and the railroad tracks here. The lot size is 22,272 square feet, and this project is proposing to do 90 units on this development. So that would be 9 stories of 10 units per floor, and then the ground level would be a parking garage. And I can answer any questions anybody has.
I don't have a question, just to say that, DPD worked hard on the MBTA communities. We're excited to see projects finally coming in. I think this is one of those funny locations, used to be Molly Kay's, which is how I am familiar with it, right around there. But given how sunken it feels from the Lord Overpass, I do think the height isn't going to feel as dramatic as 10 stories would feel if it was being built on top of the Lord Overpass, and it's something that I am certainly keeping in mind as we're looking at this project. And the unit count and mix is kind of appealing to me, given what we've been seeing as far as the demands in like the size of units people are looking for. It really kind of is. Lowell has a lot of folks that are like tripling up in triple deckers and having projects like this that are offering like studios and 1-bedrooms will hopefully help kind of move some of those people out of those units, open those back up to family units, and provide these like smaller units for people. So I like the project. I think I like the idea of it. I'm particularly excited to just already start seeing activity on the MBTA communities zoning, and it's given its proximal location to the train station. I do believe this is like a good fit for the concept of 90 units, but not that much parking, because hopefully people will be able to access the train station, but, the developer is also providing parking. And so, people can kind of make the choice as to whether or not they need to have a car in this type of project. And I kind of appreciate having that option available.
I share a lot of Giovanni's points on that. The size of the building when you first see 10 or 11 stories seems daunting, but then when you understand the topography there and how it is much lower than the roadway, I think it fits nicely and kind of pairs nicely with the courthouse, which is like on the other side of the Thorndike Street intersection there. One of the questions I had is, with the courthouse, they've done a great job masking a lot of the units on the top of the building, right? So you have like a nice clean look to the top of the building. Do you envision that with this property?
Mechanical units.
Like the mechanical units and such?
Yeah, we most certainly can do some masking elements to the roof of this building to take away that. And that's usually in the way of just pushing it in towards the center of the roof. And then putting some, fencing material around it and things of that nature. So, yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, no, I just appreciate the courthouse when I come down Chelmsford
Yeah.
Street. It just has a nice presence,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And this building is going to have that same look, right? So, those are my thoughts.
So I think this is a pretty small question in the scale of a giant building, but I'm just curious, have you thought about how the building is going to feel from the canal or from across the canal?
We might need to get some better perspectives if we can to kind of see if we can place the building with some, utilization of some Google Earth or Bird's View through Microsoft to see if we can place the building from those perspectives. But it is important, so if you're in the canal, it depends on the height of the water. I think a lot of the times when you're in the canal, you might not be able to see beyond the top of it to see the top, but you might see 3 or 4 stories, so maybe we can offer some perspectives on that. I think the further away you get over to Western Ave, over at the Western Ave Studios, is going to be more showing the visibility of it, and that's when you take off the railroad tracks and the vegetation. I could see that you're going to likely see 6, 7 stories from over at Western Ave Studios, but we can offer some better perspectives to see how that view looks, if you feel as though that's going to be one of the primary views as you come up and down Western Ave into that parking area over at the studios. Obviously, if you're in the studios and you're up on the 2nd and 3rd floor, you might see the whole building because you'll be above some of those other elements. For instance, the railroad tracks. The railroad probably sits up, I don't know, I want to say 20 feet from the ground there. So there's going to be a mixture of things that you'll see from Western Ave.
Yeah, I think I have this right, that this is the canal the National Park boats go down, right? Anybody want to?
They
So this is like definitely something that people look at a lot, these like angles from the canal. So just maybe something to consider that probably normally wouldn't be in the mix is that the national park might have, might appreciate it being pretty from that angle, or sort of blending into the aesthetic. I see some landscaping. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a full robust landscaping plan yet, but we will be providing a full landscaping plan to help with some of those elements of the view. We can incorporate some larger shade trees that can achieve some more desirable heights to help blend in the vegetation with the landscaping to the building over time. so we could provide those landscaping plans as well.
In terms of the site and the footprint of the building, and I see that there's parking that's going to be in the building itself, and then there's the at-grade parking on the canal side. Have you maxed out the footprint on the site that you can build upon with this proposal as it is now, or?
Have we maxed? Oh, yes, we have. Bless you, Giovanni. So we have maxed out the site in terms of the parking and the building footprint. Essentially, with parking, in order to get parking on both sides of an aisle, the parking area is only going to be so big. Adding more pavement doesn't necessarily gain you parking spaces. Mm-hmm. And then it just turns out that there's a natural green space beyond here. Mm-hmm. And then what else happens with buildings with parking garages is there's a ideal width to them, which typically is around 65 feet, meaning you can't gain any more parking at an at-grade garage by making it wider. So a lot of the buildings that have at-grade garages tend to be this width or longer, or double the width if they want to, double their parking. And that's what determines the width of this and the width of that. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, I'm wondering whether, if the building could kind of take an L shape, say like along the railroad side.
So we have looked at that.
Increase the footprint and to lower the height.
So we had an L-shaped building at one point. And we actually had the vehicles going underneath the L-shaped building to gain more parking. And then when we were meeting with the fire department, they had advised us to take that out and not have it more challenging for fire access. And we actually removed some of the structure here to just have the parking in here as a recommendation from the fire department. What adds cost is when you start to do this to a building, it translates the whole way up. So, historically, it's more cost effective to have a rectangular shape. And then when you start adding other elements to that and you go up in height, it just gets more expensive. But it was actually removed in order to have it this shape, which was left over by the fire department.
Right. And I do have some concerns about the proposed height, given that it is so out of character with the current nature of that historic neighborhood that is dominated by one, two, three-story buildings. There are a number of brick buildings along Middlesex that are, I think, maximum of 3 stories in height that still maintain their integrity. And this obviously rises far above that. And in our standards, we encourage new development that is in scale with the historic character of the districts, or the areas of the districts that we're looking at. So I'm trying to kind of come to terms with how this project could be done in a way that meets those standards that we use to do our reviews. I acknowledge that it is kind of an unusual site in that it does step down from Middlesex Street, and there's actually 2 Middlesex Streets. There's the one at grade directly in front of the building, but then there's the elevated Middlesex Street coming off of Thorndike, which brings you up a little bit higher and kind of elevates the viewpoint a little bit and changes the relationship of kind of the mass of the building to its surrounding environment. But as we've discussed to some degree, this is a site that's very visible from many different perspectives. You see it from the elevated Middlesex Street, you see it from the lower Middlesex Street, you see it from Thorndike Street, you see it from the canal, you'll see it from the canal walkways on either side, You see it from the Western Avenue side. So there are a lot of viewpoints that we need to take into consideration in looking at this. I think one thing that would be useful, this is certainly a helpful image, but it's in somewhat of a vacuum because it doesn't show adjacent development to help us judge just how this height relates to what's there currently. So I think to have maybe some section drawings provided that would show how this height relates to the height of Western Avenue Studios across the canal, some of the adjacent buildings nearby in Middlesex Street, maybe even show how this height is in relation to the courthouse, even though that's a totally different context. Just for reference, it'd be good to know how this compares to that. Because just talking about story, like the Western Avenue buildings across the canal are 5 stories. We're talking here about 10 stories, but stories don't really define height well because, obviously the floor to height, floor to ceiling heights of a development can really change what that overall, a 10-story building could change a lot if you're talking about 9 or 10 stories feet per floor versus a 12 or 13 feet per floor proposal. So to get some better comparisons for us to look at visually would certainly help in the review process. So that we can really assess this, how this would look compared to what's there currently.
No, we certainly would get that. But I will say that the MBTA Communities Act, which was passed by the legislature, allows for this zoning district that allows for a 7-story building.
No, understood. Mm-hmm.
Now, let me ask you from a procedural standpoint, since we want to do a 10-story building, would it be more advisable for us to go to the Board of Appeals to get the variance for the 10 stories, just in case they don't allow that, then we come back to you with the 7-story building?
It's usually the opposite.
You want to do it I'll do it however you want.
Tell people to do is get historic board before the other boards.
So get historic board first? Okay, we'll proceed with that. And we'll give you those type of renderings so that you can see them. Absolutely.
Yeah, have you looked at the economics of a smaller scale building and how that would work?
Yeah, this is the economics that he's looked at that would work in that area. This size building.
So you're saying that the building on this footprint at the 10-story height, anything below that would not?
I'm not saying that.
This development would not be viable at any other height?
It would be much, much more difficult, and I didn't look at it at Michael Ferris, by the way. So yeah, I met with a bunch of different people and a bunch of, when I say people, contractors, and talking about pricing and so forth. And the issue is, as soon as you go above 5 stories, you're talking steel, which changes the complexity and the cost per square foot of building a building. So once you get to that level, you almost need to go up just to make the economics work. So, yes, honestly, I had actually told Matt, like, the numbers really work at 12, but I could do 10. So just to give you an idea, we didn't really compromise, not saying we compromise because we are asking for more than what is typically allowed, but we've got it to where it works right now, and so that's why we're presenting it as a 10-story.
I think it's when he first came to see me about it, I said to him, really? Because, I grew up in this neighborhood and, it has been rather downtrodden for a long time. But the more I talked to him and the more I thought about it, talked to the city administration, more buildings like this are going to be coming up in that area, and they're going to transform the Middlesex and especially the Appleton Street corridor in the near future. I wouldn't be surprised to see some of the properties around the Lord overpass have these type of high-rise buildings in the future. So I think it's the future of Lowell in that area.
Yeah, I would say, and this is just like my opinion off the top of my head, this is not an official hearing where we're making a ruling, obviously.
It's an informal hearing, that's why I have no tie on.
To me personally, like, I really agree with you that the height is a concern, and it is like in the perfect design that I would love to see in like perfect worlds. I do think it would be shorter, but I think in the situation we're in terms of housing, a compromise on height is absolutely the like compromise I'm willing to make to get something built, because we just need housing so badly.
Yep.
Now, I do want to see the further drawings that put it in the context to make sure that my mental image is correct, and it's not going to be, you know, like a huge thing jutting way out ahead of everything else around it. I think it'll be good to see it in more context. But to me personally, I feel like this board is about applying the standards, but being willing to compromise to have progress in the city. And I think height would be an area where I'd personally be willing to compromise.
So I guess what we'll do, I'll contact Mr. Stoll tomorrow and find out the process for us to petition the Historic Board to approve what I suspect was going to be a proposal for a 10-story building, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, we're going to put some work into answering some of these questions about how is it going to look in place. There are ways of doing it. In fact, you can go and take photos, and then you can superimpose in the building. It'll look artificial to actual, but it is effective. We do have some techniques that we use.
Sure, and please be aware that you know, we did give you some preliminary feedback prior to this meeting, getting the input of the National Park Service architect, who's been very valuable in guiding large-scale developments of this type to bring them in line with you know, our standards. You know, Troy as well has weighed in, and we're happy to have further conversations with you outside of formal hearings to help move the project along, so they don't have to wait, you know, for your monthly opportunities to do that. So just want to make sure that that's options is available to you.
All right, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm not coming. First of all, I would be crying so hard. There's no way. So true. Yeah. Like on the highway? Oh, no. Like I'm taking the week off.
Hey, go ahead.
You're very dedicated.
Okay, now that we have a quorum, we can now move back to the public hearing portion of the agenda. And we'll start with DLHD-2526, 50 Payne Street, application for a historic permit for demolition and construction of 3 multi-unit residential buildings pursuant to the Lowell Historic District Act. Would the applicant wish to step forward and introduce the project to us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening to all. For the record, my name is John Geary of Geary & Geary LLP, 32 Church Street, Lowell, Mass. I'm here tonight representing the applicant, Andrew Tang. With us tonight, we have Andrew Tang and Steve Lawrenson. Andrew and Steve are part of the development team. We have Jim Jazokis, the architect for the project, and Matt Hammer, who will be in a minute, is consulting on the engineering side. As you know, we have the plans have been submitted in advance to the board for the board's consideration. Steve's comments, as usual, give a pretty thorough explanation of the project, but by way of summary here, we are requesting a major permit, historic permit, pursuant to Chapter 566 of the Acts of 1983, in order to demolish this rather large existing garage structure at the property that was once used as a taxi depot on the site. Has fallen into disrepair and is really not safe for any use as it presently stands on the site at 50 Payne Street. Once demolished, the applicant's anticipating or proposing to construct 24 townhouse-style residential units. Those units will be constructed in a way that run parallel to the Pawtucket Canal, so from east to west, if you will, on the property. Property lies within the downtown Lowell Historic District. The underlying zoning district within the city is the traditional mixed-use zoning district. The property is located at the junction of Payne and Saunders Street. It's a heavily industrialized area as it presently stands right now, with all kinds of auto body, auto repair shops along both Payne and Saunders Street. As Steve had mentioned in his comments, there was a previous approval from this board from a previous developer for 18 residential units. That project never got off the ground for whatever reason. We now have a new developer, and since that time, this property has been situated within the neighborhood, the multifamily neighborhood overlay district, which is one of the so-called MBA zoning districts in the city, which allows for more density. So I know that density is really not in the purview of this board, but it's worth mentioning that we could propose almost double what we are proposing here in terms of number of units. But the developer was conscientious and conservative in what he wanted to bring forward for this project. In terms of other permitting, besides this historic board permit, we need a site plan review from the planning board, and because of the proximity to the Pawtucket Canal, we'll also need to go before the Conservation Commission. That is getting underway as we speak now, that additional permitting. We've reviewed the conditions that Steve included within his comments. We have no concern with any of those conditions, and we'd be happy to incorporate those into any approval that this board may grant. Ultimately, though, we believe that we meet the design review standards for the downtown Lowell Historic District for both demolition and new construction in terms of what we're proposing to redevelop this property, and we are ultimately respectfully requesting approval this evening. At this time, I'll hand the presentation off over to Jim so Jim can go through the design of the units with the board. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Jim Jazokis, architect with Jazokis Architecture Incorporated. This particular project is it's very visible from the canal side as well as the front, so all four sides are been treated as a visible, viable front. As we're hearing, it's 24 units broken up into 3 different buildings. You have the beginning, a duplex with a 13 and then a 9-unit townhouse style, traditional colonial style buildings with A-frame roofs and a mixture of shake, clapboard, and board and batten to break up the monotony. They've also been staggered in and out to give more less of a flat rhythm and more of a as we see on the drawings here, the renderings, with a brick on the bottom to complement the mills and other buildings that are across the canal. Let's see. We have gone through a couple of design renditions with Steve and his group, as well. I believe Dave in the National Historic Park architect has also chimed in a couple of times. So that's basically it. We've been looking forward to this project. It's I think a great replacement of what is there. And I look forward to any comments or any concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of this application? If so, please step forward and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Visna Noon. I live at 10 Gibson Road, Lowell, Mass. I wish to speak in support of this project. It's an exciting project. The city has spent the next couple years, $1 million to improve the Clemente Park. This certainly will add on to the beautify that area. As is now, the garage is very deplorable. That area is overgrown, and it's really, this project certainly is going to spur development in that area. That's what we needed. This will achieve also the city goal, low forward, in terms of by increasing housing stock in the city. This project, as one of the your board indicated, is on MBTA community, zone overlay. I see this project could have been raised up, to add more unit to it, but they didn't, which is a great thing. And I think too that they will work with other entity to address those issues, whatever issue that come along, say planning board and conservation. And I see also that a possibility in the future, this will be a bridge to across from it, the Western Canal, working with the National Park, a bridge, a wooden bridge. This is going to be awesome for the city. The people of Lowell, particularly the people in the Highland, Lowell Highland, looking forward for this project. This is the start of the project in this area. I could see that will clean up the sauna and the Payne Street, the garage. All those garages there need to be taken care of at some point. This project certainly is going to clear that area and make it easier for not only people to access it, but also a fire truck and whatnot. So thank you. I will urge you, Mr. Chairman and member of the board, to support this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to speak in favor of this project? Last call for comments in favor. I'll now offer opportunity for anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to this project to step forward. Second call, third call for public comment. With that, we'll close the public hearing and open it up for board discussion. Any questions or comments from the board?
So thank you for the presentation, Jim. Great job. I think that it's a linear composition, and just by staggering the facades, as you said, I think it works well, and just the array of the materials and the composition. Again, what's there right now obviously is an eyesore, and I think what you have done here, just the scale of the buildings and how you have used the materials and the sort of like the roof lines, and it's a very, very nice project. Very nice project. Well done. Thank you.
I agree. It's a beautiful looking project. What we have there now has been detracting significantly from the neighborhood. As Councillor Noon had mentioned, the city is investing $1 million in 2025 in phase one of the Clemente Park project, which will be a multi-phase project and will see multiple millions of dollars, I think, when we get to the final phase of that project. So seeing adjacent properties making significant investments in their property, I think, is helpful, and I'm happy to see that. I also just want to thank the developers. For anybody who noticed on the site plan, they are calling for a 12.5-foot wide access easement along the edge of the property, which will in the future, hopefully provide some public access from the park to this future canal walkway that I think we're all hoping will get developed. I think one of the things that is really important as new development comes in, that we don't make decisions that hinder us from doing projects that we want to see happen in the future. And I think, making sure that we're including that kind of public access helps create opportunities, because, in 30 years or whenever that walkway gets built, without that public access, people would be kicking themselves, like, why didn't we think about connecting the park to the walkway? And so I appreciate that that's been included in the site plan. And I it's a long-term thing that we're all thinking about, but I think this is the type of decision that we need to make right now to ensure that we're setting ourselves up for a successful sort of phase along that canal walk. So I appreciate the inclusion of that. It's definitely something that I know city staff had advocated for, and I'm happy to see that it has made it into the plans before us today. So thank you very much for that.
Anyone else?
I'll just add, yeah, I think to agree with what others have said. This isn't a style of building that we see a lot in Lowell, and I think we've all seen some pretty ugly ones. So it's really nice to see one that is both some thought has been put into aesthetics at all, because some of these are so ugly, but also that it's really tried to think about how could this style of building fit into Lowell and fit into our existing buildings aesthetics. And it does feel thoughtful in that way, and I really appreciate that. I think, yeah, it's pretty hard to say no to a project that adds housing and takes away blight. So pretty thrilling in that regard, and we appreciate the efforts to find a thoughtful approach.
Yeah, I certainly agree with your comments, Troy, about the challenges of a linear site like this. And I appreciate your efforts to keep the project in scale with the neighborhood, the 2-3 stories in height. You've made some efforts to break up the massing, to also, kind of bring it down to the neighborhood scale with the gabled massing elements, and by bumping things out and by breaking it up into 3 different blocks. And also appreciate the attention to the materials. I know Steve gave you some feedback on window openings and material choices to help break it up even further, and I think all that has greatly improved the overall design. So I appreciate you taking that into account in your design efforts. So yeah, I think this is a important project and will be a great contribution to the neighborhood. If there's no further comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the site. And Steve, I don't have the full motion in front of me, but I'm assuming it's all the standard review processes.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Congratulations.
Great.
Good luck in the project.
Thank you for your patience.
Yes, thank you. All right, that concludes the public hearing portion of our agenda. We'll now move on to approval of the minutes from November 18th, 2024. Any edits or comments on the minutes? If not, a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve those minutes.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. All right, we can now move on to other business. I know it's a little bit late, but just wanted to bring up the subcommittee topic that we had discussed briefly at the last meeting. I think it's something that, if this is something that we want to move forward with, that would be a good idea to make a formal adoption vote on. I hope you all have had a chance to take a look at the 3 proposed committees that are laid out here and what their various intents are. I think that they cover a wide range of goals, but it's with the broader idea of kind of engaging the members a little more in the kind of the everyday operations of the board. Obviously, our work extends far beyond just these monthly meetings. And, Steve does a lot of work to prepare these applications and to promote the work of the board. But I think the board could certainly benefit from broader engagement from the members in that process and in kind of broader planning. And as Steve has mentioned before, this is something that the board did have in its initial 9 or 10 years of its life, and it's something that in our discussions we think would be a good thing to bring back. Just to kind of quickly review the three committees again, the subcommittees. The administrative subcommittee would really focus on kind of the big picture operation of the board and its overall role, looking at how we can enhance our internal procedures, as well as growing the public presence of historic preservation in the city. There certainly are opportunities to grow our partnerships with the Department of Planning and Development, obviously, but there are other agencies that we can engage ourselves with, other larger planning initiatives that the board could certainly contribute to. So I think would be the focus of the administrative committee. The Budget and Personnel Committee would have a little more of a tighter focus. Its first role would be really to manage the board's fee account and to review proposals for spending and identify opportunities for outside grants that we could use to leverage for our work. This pool of funds has been tapped for a number of important initiatives over the years, like our building marker program that's been very successful. It's been used for conference attendance by the administrator. And, I don't have any concerns with the way that Steve has managed these funds, but I think the subcommittee will engage the entire board and how these funds are spent moving forward and get more input on that. On the personnel side, the committee would establish a little more of a formal oversight over the administrator position, conducting annual performance evaluations, address any office needs that the administrator may have, as well as taking the lead on any future staff or outside consultant hirings. And then finally, the standards committee would oversee the board's design standards and policies, looking for ways to enhance them or to improve the public's understanding of them in advance of or during the project review process. One thing that we've been talking about that Steve mentioned last time was putting together an illustrated guide to our standards, which I think would really help inform the public about what things we look to when we're reviewing a project that comes to us, so that they can better anticipate the potential issues or concerns as they put together a project. And I know a lot of communities have done this for their historic district commissions that have been really beneficial, and there are models that we can turn to as well that can guide us in this process. So I see this committee as kind of taking the lead in that project, if that's something that we all think is a good idea to move forward with. I think this committee could also help with putting together some potential board training. I think, I know we all work with these standards in our design review, but I think we all could benefit from a refresher and maybe gain some guidance on how we should be applying them in our decision making, so that we're sure that we're following the rule of the law that we have to enforce. And I think it's been a while since we've done any kind of more formal training among the board. So with a lot of new members coming on the last couple of years, and with hopefully a new one with the planning board appointment coming down the line in the future, I think this will be a good opportunity in 2025 to focus on that. My goal is to have the board members evenly distributed among the committees, 3 per committee, with a subcommittee chair. Just for balance, and I think we can certainly be open to other approaches to that, but that's kind of how I have it in mind at this point. Certainly open things to discussion or questions that you may have about this whole concept. Now we might want to move forward with them.
Just a quick question regarding
the
formal training. Was that something that's like annual or like twice a year, or like originally?
Oh, originally.
Yeah.
I think it was just kind of as needed. certain things might arise, questions arise that kind of generate ideas for, it's nothing formal, it's informal. I remember years and years ago, we actually had a board retreat before any of you were on the board. And we went and were hosted by the Cambridge Historical Commission for the day. And it was more of a planning, training sort of thing down there. So it got us out of Lowell, got us down there for the day. But, it doesn't have to be as formal as that. It could be something 15, 20 minutes at the end of a board meeting, for example. Not, however you all want to do it.
Yeah, no, I think that would be helpful.
And any topics you think would be of interest as well, too.
Okay.
Hey, I want to know more about, what is that national register I hear about? Or what is, whatever you think might arise, we can put something together and customize it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And I think, this is something that we would, as the first step, probably do training as an entire board, but I think it would also make sense, looking down the line, to have something set that we could use to bring up to speed a new member who may not be familiar, have sort of an onboarding process or a book. I know that when I came on board, there was a big flittering binder that Steve gave me that had kind of all the regs and a lot of the brochures and neighborhood guides in there. That was really helpful. So
now it's more just go to the link on the website.
Right.
Instead of a big, thick binder.
Right. But yeah, I think there's a few different things that we could use that subcommittee for. And we certainly can, we could start with these three if we find that there are other aspects of the board's operations that may need additional committees. We can certainly take that in consideration as well. But I think these are the three that were used in the early days of the board, and it makes sense for this new era of it.
Steve, do you need help with events, or do you feel like you have that down?
Doors Open Lowell pretty much is a run by itself sort of thing. I mean, George was fantastic this past May, camped out in the Tremont Yard lobby. So, this coming May, it'll be, a couple more hands on deck is always nice, helping. I ended up having to jump offline and, do the shuttle bus first runs to make sure that was all set. I mean, and I've got a couple of other people in mind as well that had inquired almost too late last year, just members of the public. So, another 5 or 6 people, wouldn't hurt to, but that's great, Aurora. Thank you.
Would help be helpful, or would it be unhelpful?
No, I think it would.
That on a
No, I think that would, for something like Doors Open Lowell, it would be helpful. I think, sometimes, sometimes there are certain buildings that need a doorkeeper, so to speak. And Maria Dickinson in the Economic Development Office has been fantastic through the years. Just wasn't able to help this year because of a conflicting other event she was working on. But, sometimes a need arises, and, we'll let you know.
Yeah.
But I wonder if that should be a subcommittee, or if that should be in.
It's almost like that's under administrative.
Yeah, so I was thinking
in a way.
too, that could be incorporated into that as well.
I mean, it's almost like the administrative becomes policies that aren't design related, legal type stuff, but also the outreach, the engagement, community engagement component of things that we do too. Whether it's the building markers or some unknown thing we aren't even doing yet.
Social media you're doing, things like that.
I mean, sign grants could, come under that as well, but also since that's fiduciary, come under the other one. There's a lot of crossover on some of these too.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're on one committee but have ideas for another one, there's no reason why you wouldn't be shut out of that process for sure. We certainly want to engage all our interest and expertise in these subject areas.
Just out of curiosity, when these, during the time when there had been subcommittees, how did they function, and did they have regular meetings and then go to come to the larger group and present ideas, or was it sort of as needed? Just trying to understand structurally kind of how it functioned.
In talking to people from long ago, the standards met very regularly early on because they had to create the standards under the statute. What appears to have happened is they would let's say the board meets at 6 o'clock, a subcommittee would meet at 5 o'clock. Okay, it wasn't like only, they would try to keep it on the days of a board meeting, realizing that people's time is important. In this day and age, though, Zoom and everything, it doesn't necessarily have to be right before a board meeting. But, it's that's one option, is to do it, really as needed, as projects come up or as whatever. Is it a standing time? It didn't appear to be there was much of a standing time, but it does appear that, in that age of pre-Zoom, pre-technology, they did a lot of just meet before the board meeting, and then they would report to the board, what they discussed, and then would keep going from there in terms of any votes needed and such.
Steve, with these subcommittees, do you envision like having like a minimum number of times that they should meet throughout the year?
I don't know, it wasn't anything that really came up on a minimum. I mean, one could say that maybe they should meet at least once every quarter, just to check in and see what's happening and so forth. I don't know. It's up to the subcommittee to decide how often they want to meet in reality.
Yeah, I think it's fairly flexible. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it really depends on what, I would imagine a couple of initial meetings that would kind of put together some sort of work plan for what that committee would like to focus on moving forward, and then that, I think, would kind of lead to, a natural.
And one thing, though, to definitely keep in mind is they do exist as a legal subset of the board, so we will have to publicly notice at least 48 hours in advance to comply with open meeting law.
Okay. But would minutes need to be taken in each meeting? And
There were minutes, such as,
Yeah.
Yeah, again, as minutes ago, you see what came out for the
Right.
last meeting, which was a fairly long meeting. They're not verbatim.
Right.
So
Okay.
the essence of the minutes is what was discussed, were any votes taken, who made the motions, that kind of thing.
Right. Okay.
Would you staff that all?
Yeah. I mean, really, it's not a whole lot of extra heavy lifting. It's stuff we're already doing anyway. It's just to get, I think, as the chair stated, the board members more actively engaged. And in fact, it's discussions a lot of us have already had regarding this in the past. It's not just the monthly meetings, and some of, Troy and, Jeffrey know that, we're in touch on design matters off hours too.
I like the idea of the topics that sort of have already been discussed. Those seem like a great place to start, and then we'll figure it out if they don't end up
If we
working.
find that we need to tweak this as we go
Yeah,
forward, there's
yeah.
no reason why we can't do that.
I just feel like just try it.
Yeah.
Just see how it
No,
goes.
I concur. I think it's going to naturally build board engagement, but I also think it's going to also build into that training piece of it too by enhancing the engagement.
Yeah, that's how it will.
Yeah, and it's just odd. For some inexplicable reason, they just seem to drop off the cliff around 1992 or 93. Wasn't anything, when I got here, they didn't exist at that point. Except for in, more or less the design review committee, which met more formally back then on Tuesdays at 1:30.
Yeah.
But that just now that just dropped off as kind of as needed or informal. Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, so I think if we want to put together just a formal motion so that we kind of get on the books, and then we can take it from there. What I envision is if you all kind of want to think, look again at the different subcommittees and start thinking on your own what you might be interested in, given your interests and expertise. And I'll have some follow-up conversations with all of you to kind of gauge what might make the most sense, and then we can come up with a proposed list of folks based on that. Folks are amenable to that. Okay. So we want to make a motion then?
I'll make the motion to form the subcommittees as proposed.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Fantastic. Great. I appreciate everyone's openness to this, and I think it'll be a great way to get us all, as you said, trained up and involved in the day-to-day work of the board.
Whoever wasn't here becomes a chair of the committee.
Right.
That's what I get.
Yeah, we don't assign those today, but it's tempting.
Nominate
Surgery, what are you doing work?
All right. Anything from the administrator report you want to highlight, Steve?
No, everything else is for the record per usual. It was actually, last meeting had so many things in it. This was very small. Just I met with only Hall at the UMass Lowell on a project up there for a Mass Historical PNF. That was about it.
Great.
Other than that, and today we had a site meeting with DCAM and Mass Historical over at the district court, which went very well. So DCAM and Mass Historical are going to be working on an MOA for the city, and that will be moving along.
All right. Anything else from the board?
I do just want to mention to folks, because we've talked about it before, Smith Baker, that structural assessment report has been ongoing for a while. I do expect to receive it in at least draft form in the next couple weeks. And so hopefully that'll have some information that's useful to us. And so once I have that and it's in a format that's shareable, I'll be sure to send it over to Steve so folks can take a look at it. And then the plan has been we, the city, also applied for a technical assistance grant through the state to do some financial feasibility analysis, just to see whether or not the building, the Smith Baker, could realistically be rehabbed into housing. And so the technical assistance assumptions that they're going to be kind of studying is one, if the building in its entirety was just rehabbed, like saved and rehabbed for housing. Two, if there was an iteration where the facade could be saved, but then some new construction could happen. Or three, if the building can't be saved, what feasibly could be built there for housing. Obviously, what the structural report says is going to determine some of that. And so right now we're kind of waiting to get that structural report. And then the plan is, assuming that report doesn't say, yikes, that building is really dangerous. Then we'll hand that report over essentially to the folks that are kind of running this analysis so they can have that information. I do want to make sure, so there are a couple things. One, the structural analysis was a structural analysis to determine the building's structure and whether or not how sturdy she is these days. But not to do rehab. It was really any recommendations and cost estimates that they're going to provide us were essentially to help us prevent further deterioration. So it's really kind of to mothball it almost in some way. And then the other, a new path that we're pursuing currently, we have pretty substantial roadway improvements that are planned for Cardinal O'Connell. And I'm sure folks have noticed that the sidewalk is closed and the parking along the side of the building is closed. And so we are also pursuing some quotes for design for engineering firms to help us design a system to potentially wrap the building. And so if the building is going to stay, but things might be flying off the roof, we are trying to come up with some kind of containment system, essentially. Yeah, correct. And so have actually talked with the folks at Mass Mills to understand who they've been working with. And so so we have some names. And so we're investigating that because of, given the plan for that roadway is essentially we are going to make this side of the Cardinal O'Connell Parkway that is adjacent to the Smith Baker a two-way street. And so we will have 2 lanes of traffic and 1 lane of parking. And then on the other side, which is adjacent to Nibbana, well, to Tasty Dumpling, we're going to have 1 lane of traffic and angled in parking. So overall, don't freak out. We're not losing parking that much. The numbers are going to work out. But given the fact that we will then have a travel lane where essentially we have like Jersey barriers, we're trying to figure out a system for containing things. So a lot of moving pieces with the Smith Baker, but that structural report will hopefully be available in the next couple weeks. And then the city will have some actual information and not just anecdotal information to make some decisions with.
Yeah. Great.
Thank you.
Looking forward to that. All right. Anything else? Not? Take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All right. Thank you much, everyone. Good meeting.